I wanted to make a bit more systemic change at a provincial level and became an MLA in 2016 for Vancouver-Mount Pleasant, which was a huge honor. I became the first First Nations woman to ever hold a seat in the BC Legislative Assembly, which you can imagine. I always said I wish my grandparents were alive to witness that moment, to bring the drum into the Legislative Assembly.
Hello, I am John Brink and we are podcasting again on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people around the world, they say we know what Canada is. We know in Canada, we know British Columbia, and then we know Vancouver. Well, where is Prince George? I'm going to tell you. It's about 500 miles north of Vancouver, or about, for our European friends, about 800 kilometers. An amazing province, an absolute beautiful, beautiful province, in particular also northern British Columbia. British Columbia is a very big province. Prince George is in the center of it, north to south, east to west. So, and even then, it's beautiful. It's a great province, and we have a very special guest today. Her name is Melanie Mark. And Melanie has an amazing background as well. She is First Nations, and she is a member, and I try to say her nation's background: Nisga'a, Gitxsan, Cree and Ojibway. Did I say that right, Melanie?
Close. Ojibway.
Okay, Ojibway. So she has an amazing background. She is originally from British Columbia, and obviously her nations have been here forever. And then Melanie has also a very interesting background. Her education, she was one of the first persons being elected, women elected as an MLA in the BC government in 2016, and became a minister in two different portfolios. She's going to tell us all about it. But she also has passions in terms of the environment, social, economic justice. And then the other one I'm going to share with the rest of the world as well. And we are really hockey fans in North America and the rest of Europe as well, to a certain extent. But in British Columbia in particular, we have the Canucks, and both Melanie, myself, and everybody around BC are cheering for the Canucks because they're in the playoffs. So that's special to us. Melanie, can you talk a little bit about your background as First Nations and with all the different nations that you were involved with? And then you got an amazing education at the universities here, and tell us a bit about all of that.
Yeah, well, good morning. I'm participating from the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations here in Burnaby. I'm at home with my dog Maximus. Thank you so much, John, for having me as a guest. Back when I was an MLA, you had sent me your book. This is one of them in the mail, and you signed it, which was very, very sweet of you.
Thank you.
So it's just such an honor to be here with you today, to be a guest on your show. You've got so many fans, and I'm one of them, so it's just really wonderful to be here. As you mentioned,
very special.
Thank you. Yeah, it really means a lot to be here today. And to your team that makes this possible. I know that there are a lot of people behind the scenes making this happen. So my background, I'm Nisga'a and Gitxsan on my mom's side, Cree, Ojibway, French, and Scottish on my dad's side. And by way of protocol, what I'm saying is, from a matrilineal background, I'm honoring my mom's mom. I'm from the Eagle clan. You can see behind me, I have a drum with an eagle on it. So I'm from the Eagle clan. My Nisga'a name's Hli Haykwhl วี่Xsgaak. I got that name at a feast many years ago. And my grandpa's from Gitxsan territory, from the Frog clan. And then my dad's from Winnipeg. He is from the Peguis First Nation. So that's my First Nations background. As you mentioned, I'm from Vancouver. I was born and raised in Vancouver. I'm one of the few people that was born at Vancouver General Hospital. And I'm a huge Canucks fan. As you can see, I've got my shirt on. I've got my hockey mug. The game is on tonight, so I'm trying to get through all of my chores so I can enjoy the game at 4 o'clock. But by way of background, I think professionally I can skip through a few stages. What I really wanted to do outside of high school, I first wanted to become a PE teacher, and then I wanted to become a police officer, and then I became a child and youth advocate for many years, working with Covenant House Vancouver, Save the Children Canada, working with the Urban Native Youth Association, and then with the representative for children and youth. I spent almost 8 years there as an advocate for kids in foster care, which was something that was really important to me. Given my background, I was a youth in care, and my family had experience with the foster care system. And then I became, I guess, I wanted to make a bit more systemic change at a provincial level, and became an MLA in 2016 for Vancouver-Mount Pleasant, which was a huge honor. I became the first First Nations woman to ever hold a seat in the BC Legislative Assembly, which you can imagine. I always said I wish my grandparents were alive to witness that moment, to bring the drum into the Legislative Assembly.
Amazing, Melanie. I just want to go back a little bit for our guest watching and from around the world. There is a lot of history between First Nations in Canada, obviously, but in particular, as we are sitting here in British Columbia, and there have been a lot of changes taking place in recognizing the historic significance of those nations. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, how many nations would there be? Well, in 200 and
204.
204 throughout British Columbia, and that are all in a way connected. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it's interesting that you say, because there is history that connects you through the different stages, amazing history behind the structure of First Nations. And then the other major part that occurred in my mind is that not only is our First Nations much more recognized by law and by the people in general, and participating much more in the provincial politics, but also in the structure. But when you became the first woman elected as an MLA in 2016, was another major step forward. And as you said, that if your grandparents could look back, and what appeared a long time, appearing like it would not be possible, became possible, and we are only still at the beginning.
Yeah, thank you for pausing to acknowledge that. History, in fact, my grandparents really endured a lot. My grandmother went to St. Michael's Residential School, and my grandpa from the Gitxsan Nation hid from Indian agents when he was a child. And my grandparents on my dad's side went to Brandon and Elkhorn residential schools. So I'm only one generation removed from the residential school system. And then myself being in foster care, you can see that the system is still stacked against us. The system of oppression is real. First Nations people in this country are overrepresented in the jails and the criminal justice system. They are most likely to be homeless, living in poverty. Missing murdered Indigenous women is a major genocidal issue in this country. There are many, many systemic issues impacting First Nations across what we call Canada. And I think that's what's driven my passion to fight and be an advocate to turn things around for what my grandparents faced and what their grandparents faced. And so that my children, my two daughters, Maya and Michaela, and all other Indigenous children in this country have a brighter future. But I think sometimes people forget how present this issue of colonialism is in our country. When we think about Indian residential schools, the discovery of children in unmarked graves just a few years ago, we are unpacking the damage of colonialism to First Nations people. And with that, with all of those conditions, what I take most pride in is that we're still here, and that resilience and adversity that is in our DNA to be present and to be here, and not just fighting for ourselves and our rights, but for just a more holistic way of living in our society in what we call Canada.
Yeah, and the other part about it, Melanie, at least from my perspective, and I came to Canada in 1965 when I was 23. I've been here for about 60 years, but even in that period, I've seen at least making some headway, and the things that happened to those schools and the unmarked graves is still something that is very close, still not a generation past, but it's still unwinding itself, even still today, still very raw out there. And so, we collectively are still adjusting to, hopefully, as you say, a more holistic opportunity, because this is such a beautiful country with so much opportunity, and holiness and all those kind of things we have to work together to take up that opportunity of the future. But we're still not there. We're working our way still through that, at least in my opinion. And your involvement as an MLA made the commitment to be involved. But again, as well as I do, I've always been active, even in my own way. I was not an MLA, but I've been always active because, if you want to make change, then you have to be active, not necessarily be elected, but you have to stay proactive to make sure we do the right thing collectively, because it's still very much a work in progress.
Oh, for sure. You can't be an armchair quarterback. You can't be a keyboard warrior. You literally have to get up every day and do your best to make a difference, a positive difference in community. And I feel really honored that I've had that DNA in my life. I've always had a passion for justice, a passion for the underdog, speaking up for people that can't speak for themselves, the courage to speak truth to power. I've never been afraid to speak truth to power, because I've been honored to have the stories of people relying on me to speak on their behalf to make the conditions for their lives better. And that's why I mentioned I've always been an advocate for kids. Kids don't vote. There's a reason why kids, don't get their needs met in institutions, provincial politics or federal politics. It doesn't matter what level you're talking about. Kids don't vote, and so it's upon us to be their advocate. And to the point of the residential schools, being in politics, it was so traumatic to learn about the discovery of these children. It was traumatic to understand that this happened in our backyard. And something that I said factually, not to be provocative, imagine that your child went to school and didn't make it home. We really have to impress upon society that is the fact, that is the truth, that is what truth and reconciliation means in this country. Is we really have to acknowledge the devastation to our family, our communities, our nations, and how we're coming to terms with that truth to turn things around. I think it's upon all of us. You mentioned your passion. We need allies to paddle together. Behind me, I have a canoe that my aunt had carved for me. And I don't know if you can see it, but
Yeah.
my rugby ball's in there.
I love the canoe, and especially the canoe is very, very beautiful and very effective, especially when the water is rising. And one of your sayings, is popular around the canoe. But how do you say it again? When the
paddles
water,
together.
yeah, and
Oh,
that's
a rising tide lifts all canoes.
correct.
Yes.
I love it. So now the other part that you did is all of a sudden, that politics is, to say the least, interesting. And my exposure to it has been relatively close, been a lot of, because I'm proactive in the things that I do. I'm very active in the lumber manufacturing sector, especially in value-added manufacturing. And the beautiful resources that we have. How can we add more social and economic value to it, and how can we get more inclusion of more sectors of the population, in particular First Nations, and do more training and skills development and all of that. And now you at one point were also Minister of Education.
Yeah, I was the Minister for Advanced Education, Skills and Training.
Right. And so that involved then, in particular, I've been an advocate of, if I look at Northern British Columbia, which is, produces about 75-80% of the GDP, the gross domestic product of British Columbia comes from Northern B.C. And I think sometimes tongue in cheek a little bit, but when I talk about the economy and the communities here, both the cities but also First Nations and everybody that is involved, is that I say not all the money that we generate and lay out for capital projects. My friends down south get most of that, and then I say we have to spend more in Northern BC, especially for infrastructure in terms of development, schooling, and all of that. And then I kind of look over my shoulders to my friends in the back. I say 75-80% of the GDP comes from the north. Don't forget that.
Oh, I'm with you. My grandpa was in the logging industry in Hli Haykwhl Wiąii. My mom, my family was raised in a resource family. I know what it means to have those good paying jobs to support family. And my family is Nisga'a and Gitxsan, which is up by Terrace. So I have a huge and deep respect for northern communities. And Prince George, when I was the minister for advanced education, skills and training, I spent a lot of time with it. UNBC, the University for Northern British Columbia, and College of New Caledonia, they're doing great things for community. Brought one of the first engineering programs to UNBC and a sonography program because I really heard from the community that students don't want to have to come down to Vancouver in the south to access their education. They wanted to stay close to home, get their education, and then cultivate their knowledge and stay home. Yeah, it was basic to me. It was a basic principle. So it was an honor to be an advocate to bring access to education closer to home. Anytime we can reduce barriers for people or cost of living was also something important to me. When I was minister, we eliminated interest on student loans. We have to thank Carol James, who was the Minister of Finance then.
Yeah.
It was a shared checking account with the Treasury Board. So anytime we had those big wins, don't forget to thank the Minister for Finance and Treasury Board. Also creating student housing, $500 million to create student housing, because this was a huge barrier for students to go to school, leave home, right? Leave their community, go to the big smoke like Prince George or Terrace. That's a big move for some people. And having family housing or student housing where they've got peers, or Indigenous housing. All of the above was something that students asked for. So it was an honor to be an advocate in that ministry. But the best thing I did, John, was create the tuition waiver program. I was 6 weeks on the job, and it was a program that we created for youth in care, kids that were in foster care, to go to school, because kids in care don't have a parent to lean on. They don't have a couch to sleep on or a car to borrow. They don't have those extra privileges. And it was important to Premier John Horgan and myself to open those doors for former youth in care to go to school, and they're going to have to do the heavy lifting. Whatever course they were signing up for, they were going to have to do the work. But we wanted to reduce that burden of stress, that financial stress that often holds people back that don't come from a place of privilege. And to this day, we've got over 3,000 young people that have gone to public post-secondary schools to pursue their dreams. So that was one of the best things I ever did in politics.
And it took somebody like you, with your background, in your history, and your knowledge of those issues, in combination with, just for our guests that are watching us, with Premier John Horgan, who was another amazing individual. Unfortunately, had to cut short his premiership because of illness or issues, but again, touched on many programs, but being in politics is delicate and difficult. I was very involved with the establishment of the freestanding university, the University of Northern British Columbia, which is the largest most popular small universities in Canada, several years in a row. And then the College of New Caledonia, and other amazing facilities. And I was quite involved in the John A. Brink Trades and Technology Center that got my name on it, and I'm honored to be that and being involved in it. But I'm still working on a center of excellence here in Northern British Columbia for all of us that are wanting to stay here, and the need, the development of skill sets. A lot of times we're spending a whole lot of money on, and I'm not against that. I had to do several presentations at BCIT, British Columbia Technology Center, is that I had to do a presentation there, and I think there are 40,000 students. It's so large, I don't even know where do I go here. And I think some of that money, although they're doing a very good job, we should do some of that in Northern British Columbia that has such a major growth opportunity. But I just kind of throw that in, and I'm sure you agree with me that especially now, and also with First Nations, that they're becoming much more involved in the economics, and then creating entrepreneurships and trades, and that would be helpful to us in Northern British Columbia to create the opportunities.
100%. One thing I was really passionate about, because I'd never heard of red seals. I didn't grow up in a family with red seals. We need red seals to build this province. We live in the best BC, but in order to be the best, you need to build the best, and you need people skilled in the trades. And as you mentioned, John, it really reminded me of what he always said. Education is the great equalizer.
Exactly.
And anytime that we can unleash that potential in people so that they can have a good, first of all, follow your passion with what you're good at. This, I can see right behind you, living your dream and your passion. Like, this is essential to our well-being and happiness. Find your gift. And it doesn't mean it's easy. Going to school was not easy for me. I went through 6 different high schools. I had C minuses. I spent most of my time in the hallway for talking. And it kind of, after being diagnosed with ADHD last year, my whole life makes sense, because I was always in trouble.
What took you so long?
I was always in trouble for talking, right? And
Yeah,
then of course, as time moves on, I became an MLA, and my job was to be an advocate, to speak on behalf of other people, to use my gift of advocacy. So it all comes around, but the education piece I can't emphasize enough, because when I look back behind me, getting my degree from Simon Fraser University, I was the first person in my family to graduate from high school, and then to graduate from college at Douglas, and then to graduate from Simon Fraser University. And I say that while also just acknowledging what we talked about 10 minutes ago. My grandparents went to residential school, and Justice Murray Sinclair said, education got us into this mess, and education's going to get us out. And
exactly.
knowing all of that now is why I'm always trying to encourage people to follow their dreams and pursue their educational aspirations.
So I want to talk a little bit about the shock that you got, that saying that you have an amazing background, amazing credentials, education-wise, and then became the first MLA, and other first, and then a minister, and all the other things, and already you have, the there must have always been things in your mind and saying, why do I have these struggles? I went through that, like I was, and I, I failed grade 3, I failed grade 7 3 times, and then they said, what are we going to do with this guy? And my parents were beautiful people. They said, well, maybe, send him to the mentally challenged school. So they didn't want to do that. They said, let's teach him a trade. So I became a furniture maker. But when I was 13, it took me, and you have had my book, so it took me till I was 57 that I picked up a book in a bookstore, Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Hli Haykwhl, and I opened the book. I still don't know why. I looked at it, ADHD. I didn't even know what it meant, Melanie. And I said, the more I read in the book, standing in that store, finally the guy came over and said, are we going to buy this thing? Or what? No, he didn't say that. But anyway, so I was really fascinated, because I said, now I finally know. And I bought the book. I wrote in it in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am, because I was ashamed of it, because of stigma attached to it. And then from that point forward, became more proactive. It took me 5 years to go to our doc, that was a personal friend, had delivered our 2 daughters, and I was already 62. I walked into his office, and he said, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. So we checked it out. Yeah, I do. So it took me nearly 50 years of having that feeling inside of me, what's wrong? Why can I not do what all my friends do? Because what happened there is that when I left grade 7 after failing 3 times at 13, my friends went on to college, universities, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then I was kind of looked down on. And then when I kind of felt that I had to start over again in a way. And then the other part that I probably said, we were liberated, and that's a bit of a special one for me right now in particular, because we were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th in my hometown in Northern Holland, April the 12th, 1945. And I knew from that point forward, I would go to the land of my heroes. And it took me till I was 23 until I do that. And I left Holland, when I was 23, and with a suitcase, 3 books, and 2 sets of clothes, and $150. And when I arrived in Prince George, you probably have seen this before, I had $25.47. But what I had lots of, I always stay positive. No matter how tough things go, I avoid negative. I have a passion. I give it 150%. And then work ethic. I work harder, even now at nearly 84. I work harder than anybody. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late. I always make my bed. And I'm always in a hurry. The point that I was going to make, Melanie, and that's the point that I'm really trying to drive. It took me till I was 62 for nearly 50 years, wondering, who am I? What is it that makes me different? And at the same time, when I already was successful in business here, people said, oh, you're so successful. I didn't feel that way at all. I felt I had failed until I found that book, and it said ADHD. And the more I found out about it, and when I Googled it, the more I knew the frequency of occurrence then was thought to be probably around 8% or so. I felt it was higher than that. And so I started talking about it in presentations that I did, that I thought it was at least 20%. Now, I did a podcast that may be of interest, maybe you've seen it, is You Are 248. The podcast is 203, and it was with Dr. Hli Haykwhl, who wrote the book. Dr. Hli Haykwhl is ADHD, written about 18 books, 5 on distraction, and I had the opportunity to podcast him. And, and as we were discussing it, and I said to him, in my opinion, the frequency of occurrence is probably 20% or more. He said, no, John, it's 25% or more. I agree with him. And then the other part that we talked about, I said, in terms of entrepreneurship, and the successful is the operative here, successful entrepreneurship and CEOs, the frequency of occurrence of ADHD is, in my opinion, I said to Dr. Hli Haykwhl, is at least 50%. He said, no, John, it's more than 75%. And I believe that. It's a superpower. And the key is to unlock it and understand it. And I know you have had challenges with it and obviously recognized it and did very, very successful. But it has been my objective to not only on that particular topic, but kind of on one way. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Coming through the war, with PTSD, the inner child, the fear of losing, got counseling on that when I was well into my 50s, very emotional actually. And then, starting from new and from nothing and always questioning. I was always optimistic, but always feeling that there was something missing, that I had failed. And everybody said, you're so successful, but I didn't feel that way until it kind of unlocked it, and reading that part, and it changed everything in my life.
Yeah, there's a lot there, John. I think you're reminding me, growing up, I've always had a lot of energy, and I've always been very curious. And when I think about a couple of years ago, some of the staff that worked with me as a minister, they were like, does Minister Mark always have this energy? And I said, I'm like Tigger. I just jump out of bed and take on the day, and I'm like, let's go. And all my friends will tell you that, my colleagues will tell you that, my family will tell you that. I have always been high octane, just go, 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 go. And of course, there have been struggles along the way. There are things that now make a little bit more sense. Having an understanding about ADHD, embracing and learning about, neurodiversity, not really embracing it as a label. I mean, I've had so many labels in my life, especially just having a bad attitude, which I always just find so offensive, because like you, I'm a pretty positive person, but I'm an advocate for justice, and I'm going to fight, and my energy and the capacity that I have in a day to fight, I'm going to go all in. I've always said sleep is overrated. So, to your listeners, I get about 6 hours of sleep. I make my bed too when I wake up. Structure is very important to me. Time is something that I've really had to just embrace my agenda, my clock, because I can get distracted. And so, the superpower that we have is being highly organized and alive to the fact that, okay, if I've got 18 hours, what am I going to do? What is the sequence of what I need to accomplish in the day? So I get huge reward from ticking things off my list. And as I mentioned in the beginning, because of all of these social issues and things that we need to fight for to change, I don't got all day. So,
Exactly.
I have to be strategic in the work that I do in my life. And so I wanted to pause to share an eagle feather that for your viewers, I feel like it represents my life. I'm 48 years old, and I've had an incredible life. I've done remarkable things with this superpower, raising my daughters, being a politician. Now I'm moving into, the entrepreneurial space. But
Now the
why?
feather, Melanie, the feather is something that is unique in First Nations because I've been being presented by Clayton Ojibway, the individuals well that have been very much part of this region here and is the territory of the Clayton Ojibway. So very interesting. And I've been quite involved with them,
Yeah, so when you have that emotion, so ADHD people are very visceral people. We feel things that other people don't. And why I'm sharing this with you is that passion for learning is to share knowledge and to share education without lecturing. I'm very proud to be from the Eagle clan. Eagle feathers represent friendship and strength.
Yeah.
And, my life wasn't easy. For a lot of Indigenous people, our life hasn't been easy. But I had mentioned earlier, the drive in my heart, the fire in me, is so that my kids get a brighter future. Exactly. And that they don't have to carry the burden of trauma, and they don't have to carry the burden of the fight or flight that you and I have had to live with.
Exactly.
And that's also something very characteristic of people with ADHD. It's fight or flight. We're not always on edge, so to speak, right. But there's a constant sense of urgency that we have. And so going back to your emotion with the Gitxsan, the nations are different across BC. We're not all the same.
No.
We all have different protocols and customs, but there are some things that are foundational to our culture. We care about the land. We're never going to give up fighting for our rights. It is all about our children. It is all about the future. And we are going to put, Grand Chief Stuart Phillips said, reconciliation isn't for wimps. We're going to give it our all to fight for all of those things because the time is now. Yeah. And I'm so thankful that I have the superpower that I can wear all these multiple hats to do my level best to fight for better conditions for First Nations people, whether that's for social justice, environmental justice, or economic justice. We need to break the cycle of poverty, and we do that by giving people jobs.
Exactly.
Simple.
And that gives them self-confidence, and then gives them the feeling of strength and all the things that makes an individual, I'm as good as anybody else, and take charge of the opportunity, whatever it may be, and give it all they got. But to know that they are being recognized and have opportunities that do exist, and there are many of them. But I believe it is moving in the direction it should go, maybe slower than it could have been and should have been, but people like you not only have, but still are contributing to that all around the province, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. I think I always say to people, time is our currency, and we don't have all day to make the change and to turn things around. Takes all of our efforts. I want to show you another show and tell for a moment.
Yeah.
I was mentioning that I have a sense of justice. I've always had a sense of justice in my life. And, we just have to look at the scales, right?
Right.
And those scales of justice for Indigenous people, this is equity. We need to level the playing field for Indigenous people so that they have that self-determination that we had from the beginning to support our families and our communities and to have that sense of pride. No one wants to be homeless. No one wants to be addicted to opioids or drugs. No one wants to feel a sense of helplessness and despair. And so as a community, we have to, again, do our level best to give people that sense of belonging. And we can do that through education, giving people a job, giving them a place to go where they feel like they can belong and contribute. I really believe that's what we need to do to turn some of the statistics around that are negatively impacting people that have faced trauma.
See, in my case, I was not born here. I was born in Holland. And then, as I said earlier, everybody loves, especially in Holland, because they liberated us. And in a way, today, tomorrow, and Sunday in particular, is very important for the Dutch because Remembrance Day is May the 5th in Holland. And they remember those that gave it all, and Canadians were the main forces that liberated Holland. And that always stayed with the people in Holland. So, very important day, and even the small children will know about Canada and what they did. A lot of times, the importance of it, sometimes people don't, I say it respectfully, but how that feeling still is there, even today, all because of what happened then during the Second World War.
John, again, just thinking, picking up on your emotion, my whole life, I've always had a fight for justice, a fight for rights. I wanted to be a part of a human rights movement. I felt like I was born in the wrong generation. My mom was a big fan of John Lennon, and I was raised believing that, you imagine all the people like that. This was my birthright growing up. And so fast forward, I had a chance to grow up with the Constitution in 1982. And you can imagine in my life, in 2019, I got to vote as an MLA and as a cabinet minister for the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People in this country. Like, these are historic moments. And that's why we can't give up. Right? That's why people like me have to kick through the doors of the legislature and say, we're here. We're still here. We're not going anywhere.
No.
And something I shared with a workshop I did recently, because someone once told me this, an educated Indian is a dangerous Indian. And so I worked so hard to go through school, not because it was easy. Going back to the ADHD, it was hard. I was a single mom. I had to reread things time and time again because it took me forever to focus and do my homework. I wrote all my papers the night before. I researched and I spent the last night cramming. Like, I honestly look back and I don't even know how I did it.
Yeah.
But that's why the ADHD discovery all makes sense.
Superpower.
Superpower.
So at what point, Melanie, did you know you were ADHD? And then likely more importantly, that it probably made you who you are extremely special and a superpower going through all the things that you did and staying the course and keep going forward.
I got diagnosed last year. So the light bulb went off in our family, and I just want to respect my daughter's privacy. But, light bulb went off in our family, and, I was reaching out to friends. I got diagnosed myself, and it was quite funny because, I think it's funny because it said that I have a problem with authority. But I also have oppositional defiance disorder. And when you say superpower, it really depends on how you want to look at it. Some people think Melanie has an attitude problem, and other people think Melanie has that and grit and isn't afraid to speak up. And so I'm gonna lean on that side of having the guts to say what needs to be said instead of wrapping it up in a way that it's so polished and so plastic, I guess, instead of calling it out for what it is. And I think ADHD people have that superpower, right? I learned that Michael Jordan has ADHD, and if you watched his documentary, people would think that Michael Jordan is like this really great guy. Oh, he's so nice. He was a jerk. Like he pushed. He was harsh. He was like in your face. People don't want to see that side of Michael Jordan. But
No.
it was important to look behind the scenes to see that we're not all perfect.
What's perfect?
What's perfect?
Yeah. So who is the judge? So like with me, I think I'm a nice guy, but I'm also a hard-nosed, and I have the deep sense of fairness and commitment to culture and community, and I've always had that. And I've been in the forest industry my whole life. From the time that I was 13, I worked started as a furniture in a furniture factory, and as a laborer, and so I spent 70 years in the lumber industry, and I believe in adding more value, social and economic. And when I dealt with the forest industry, I was the longest serving director on the Council of Forest Industry, and I've been involved in organization. And at one point, they had two sets of standards in the industry that were fraudulent, grading rules that were far less restrictive than they should have been. And they had two sets, one set very restrictive, the other one. So I took them to court. Little did I know at the time, I thought it was a regional issue. Then it became a provincial issue. Then it was not only Canada, it was North America, from Florida to California, from Labrador to Alaska. It cost me my company, but I won the case. It's something like walking around across the sidewalk or the walkway across the street on green, and somebody runs over you and say, well, it's not your fault, it was the other guy's fault, but in the meantime, you're dead. So I climbed back from that and changed the industry, and since that time, still be an advocate for, with this precious fiber that we have here, we're cranking it all into 2x4s that nobody wants. And so when are we going to add more value, social and economic? Where are the opportunities? And why do so much of the fiber controlled by 2 or 3 different companies? So so I'm a bit of a rebel as well, although I'm also a nice guy. And then I'm fairly effective in writing books, obviously. Where did that come from? From grade 3 or grade 7? I'm a very good writer, and I'm very good in numbers. So I just was not very good sitting in the class and listening to a whole lot of stuff that didn't interest me, so I may as well not. So if people say to me, hey John, does it bother you that you had to stop school at grade 7? I said, yeah, it sure does. It still bothers me even today. I should have stopped earlier.
I think it's a mindset, right? And I think people take comfort in giving labels. It makes them feel better.
Yeah.
But I don't. Going back to your rebel self-identification, I have no problem being a disruptor. I take pride in being a S disturber. You know, I've always kind of shaken things up, disrupting the status quo because somebody has to. And it goes back to having like guts or determination or grit to push against the grain versus just accepting the status quo. I just have zero tolerance for that.
And we need that kind of input in order to be a community or a country or interacting the way we should. We need people to question the status quo. Why are we doing this? And somebody in the industry is the same, you know, I've been very involved in associations and politics and all that kind of stuff. And most people are trained to be in that box, and I don't do that. I know what is in the box, but what makes them uncomfortable, I always reach outside of the box. So why are we doing it this way? How about this way or the other way? Why are we not doing it so? And I believe that part is very, very important, Melanie. So now we're nearly running out of time. So what else would you like to just talk about for a little bit here towards the end of getting together? We covered so much already, and I'm not sure if I talked about all the things that are important to you.
Well, I think we've covered a lot. I do know that your team was going to kind of show my hockey jersey in the back.
Yeah.
Because you're reminding me of something. You're reminding me of my friend Francesco Aquilini. You know, their family obviously owns the Canucks. And Francesco, you know, told me what his dad had taught him. And that was, you know, if you're surrounded by, let's say, 5 punks, guess what? You're the 6th punk.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be the best, you got to surround yourself with the best and surround yourself with people that are going to push you to be your best. I think that's an important lesson that really helped in my life. And I shared that jersey because, you know, Francesco was so generous with me. We went through that global pandemic. I was the minister for tourism, arts, culture, and sport. The stadiums were shut down. The world was shut down. It was a crazy time. Let's not forget how crazy this was. Dr. Bonnie Henry on the news every day. Like, it was really, really intense. But that jersey he gave me for, you know, First Nations Indigenous Night, and to honor.
Did we show that? Yeah. So we're going to
that jersey was given to me, and so I guess just closing off on what an honor it was to be the minister for tourism, arts, culture, and sport while the world was going through so much trauma, and to be a big advocate for the things that are important to us: arts, culture, sport, you know, gathering, play, medicine. Like, that was really, really critical. And, you know, for the Aquilini family to acknowledge First Nations. But the other part about the Orange Shirt Day movement is that orange is the happiest color.
Yeah.
And that's how I want to leave your show, is like, I want people to live their best life.
Yeah.
And to live your best life, you need to be surrounded with good medicine and people that want to lift you up. And so I want to thank you for sending me this book, and for your good medicine, and for being just a champion for change, a champion for people like myself to feel empowered with our superpower. And of course, I'm going to say, go Canucks, go, because we're in the playoffs.
And Melanie, it was a pleasure and a privilege to have you on my podcast. And let's stay in touch. We not only know each other, I believe. Be friends.
We're friends. We can talk about entrepreneurship the next time.
Sounds good, Melanie. Thanks for being part of my show. Take care.
Thank you, John. Okay, have a good day. Talk to you soon.
Too. Bye-bye.